You know, anytime an armed anti-authority activist takes a stand against a government agency, you can bet two words come to mind: Ruby Ridge. That one incident in 1992, many experts believe, added more fuel to an already smoldering anti-government militia movement, one that led to violence in several cases. You think Waco, the following year, Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. The seeds of the siege at Ruby Ridge were planted a year and a half earlier, though, in January of 1991. When Randy Weaver, a former Army engineer, was arrested by the Boundary County Sheriff and ATF agents on weapons charges for having a sawed-off shotgun. Weaver was released on bond, but when he didn't show up for a court hearing, a judge issued an arrest warrant for his failure to appear, even though the court date he was given was incorrect. Well, that's when the U.S. Marshal Service took over, and they tried several times to negotiate a peaceful surrender, knowing he and his family were well armed. But Weaver, a known survivalist and white nationalist, refused to leave his cabin. And what would become the rallying cry for Second Amendment rights advocates and anti-government overreach was first heard on this day in North Idaho 31 years ago. For months, federal agents' eyes were on the cabin and compound of the Weavers. But what many believed was the beginning of the modern militia movement actually came on the heels of a boy following his dog on August 21st, 1992. That day, the Weavers' dogs alerted to something outside the cabin. Randy Weaver went to check it out. So did his 14-year-old son, Sammy, and family friend, Kevin Harris. They went a different direction than Randy, though, trailing a yellow lab named Stryker. What they didn't know was earlier in the day, 6 U.S. Marshals went into the trees with the hope of watching and eventually arresting Weaver. Weaver saw them and ran back to the cabin. But Stryker led Sammy right to the federal agents shortly after. And what happened next has been disputed since.
On August 21st, 1992, shots rang out in the remote hills of northern Idaho.
You know, it was right about, it's funny, this time I got the call.
Idaho's U.S. Marshal Mike Johnson had a deputy stationed at Ruby Ridge that day. Johnson explained it this way to KTVB 10 years later.
The initial shootout that occurred of who shot first, we'll never know.
What we do know is that U.S. Deputy Marshal Bill Deegan and Randy Weaver's 14-year-old son both died in that exchange. It was the beginning of an 11-day standoff at Ruby Ridge. Before it was over, Weaver's wife was also shot and killed.
In another confrontation with the feds the following day, Randy Weaver was shot by an FBI sniper. So was Harris. The bullet that hit Harris also hit Vicki Weaver. She was standing behind the cabin door, holding her 10-month-old baby when Harris ran in.
Authorities still can't predict how long this ordeal will drag on, but now that Randy Weaver's finally talking, they say there's real hope of resolving this standoff without further bloodshed.
The days that followed,
it's gonna happen to us all!
Saw more confrontations outside the perimeter of Ruby Ridge as dozens of protesters,
this is not Aryan Nation stuff!
And hundreds of federal agents descended on North Idaho.
I want you to know we remain very positive. The plan that's in effect to bring about a situation where we can have this situation resolved without any loss of life. That's our objective.
Well, Stryker, the yellow lab, was also killed in that initial confrontation. And after negotiating with former Green Beret Bo Gritz, Harris surrendered on August 30th. Weaver would turn himself in the next day. During his trial, Weaver would be acquitted of most of the serious charges against him, and Harris was acquitted of all of his charges. The Weaver family surviving members filed a wrongful death case for the death of Sammy and Vicki. Randy Weaver received a $100,000 settlement. His 3 children each received $1 million in 1995. Randy Weaver died in May of last year at the age of 74.